Are we as humans smarter than a plant? Now that might seem like a really silly question, but the answer to that question is going to determine our fate as a species. Hang out to the end of this video to see why. Now, you might not agree with me on sustainability or climate change, but I think there is one thing that we can all agree on, that being alive is a good thing. And when we look throughout history, we see one very strong message when it comes to staying alive as a species. Don't with carbon. There have been 5 major extinction events as life developed on our planet. 5 times where the majority of the species on this planet were completely wiped out and life itself almost stopped. When we think about extinction events, our minds tend to go to thoughts of a comet or an asteroid careening through space towards our planet. But when we look throughout history at these 5 major extinction events, only one was caused by a meteor impact. The other 4 extinction events all had one thread in common: carbon dioxide. The first extinction event is the Late Ordovician. In this event, a period of global cooling was followed by a period of global warming. Although the exact cause of this climate shift is still debated, it was preceded by a drop in atmospheric carbon. One likely culprit are photosynthetic organisms. Photosynthetic organisms are things like plants, algae, and even some bacteria. These organisms are made out of carbon, and they get that carbon from the atmosphere, specifically carbon dioxide. So any sort of uncontrolled growth will reduce the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere and subsequently reduce temperatures. In total, 86% of all the species that were alive at this time were completely wiped off the planet, never to return again. And this is an excellent example of the issue with carbon dioxide. CO2 isn't a bad thing. Without CO2, life wouldn't exist on this planet. The problem is taking the amount of CO2 out of equilibrium. When the amount of CO2 is very stable for a very long time, the climate stabilizes, and plants and animals grow and adapt to those specific conditions. If that is changed too fast for plants and animals to adapt, they die, and that is not a good thing. The next extinction event is the Late Devonian. Land plants went through a phase of evolution called the Silurian-Devonian terrestrial revolution. During this time, land plants went from being about a foot tall to being 90 feet tall. This massive increase in terrestrial plant life lowered the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, causing rapid global cooling, as well as causing widespread anoxia in the oceans. This time around, we lost 75% of all the species that were alive at the time, but somehow life managed to squeak by. Then came a big one, the end Permian. Leading theories implicate volcanic activity releasing a ton of CO2 into the atmosphere, causing global warming, ocean acidification, acid rain, and a lot of other changes to ocean and land chemistry. This is very, very similar to what is occurring right now. And this time around, we lost 96% of all the species on the planet. Not 96% of life. 96% of species completely wiped out. If that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. Later in history, a very similar event occurred, spurring the Late Triassic extinction event. This time around, we lost 80% of all the species on the planet. And once again, the common thread: CO2. And finally, we get to our Hollywood blockbuster event, the giant meteor impact that took out the dinosaurs. This time around, we lost 75% of all the species on the planet. So as you can see, we should be a lot more concerned with the amount of CO2 here on Earth than we are with what might be coming at us from outer space. Now, you might be saying, hang on a minute, doesn't this mean that climate change is natural? After all, humans weren't around for any of this stuff, and now we're blaming humans for everything. And you would be 100% correct. Actually, I'll one-up you. Climate change caused by a species becoming dominant and altering the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is also absolutely natural. We're not the first, we're not the second, we're most likely the third species to do this. But do you know what else is natural? Getting eaten alive by a pack of lions. Getting eaten alive by a pack of lions is a perfectly natural way to go. It is also a horrible way to go. And since humans have developed higher brain function, we've created and put in place stopgaps to keep us from being eaten alive by a pack of lions. See, that's the beauty of higher intelligence. When we're talking about these first two extinction events and their likely causes, had this photosynthetic life had higher brain function, I'm sure some plant scientist would have raised some alarm bells and said, hey, look, if we keep doing what we're doing right now, we're all going to die and we're probably going to take most of the species on the planet with us. They might have heeded that warning and changed their behavior. But they didn't. Do you know why? Because plants are dumb. But here we are at the same crossroads. We're doing the same thing that has been done before. Only this time around, we're smart enough to see the train coming down the tracks. So whether or not we get out of the way and survive comes down to one really simple question. Are we, as humans, smarter than a plant?